So I've just arrived in Turkey and I'm straight into a taxi. Lovely Turkish bloke. He's taken me on a little antiquities tour of Bodrum. It's in the ancient theatre, and now we're at the old gates of the city, 4th century BC, under the rule of the Achaemenid Persians. The local satraps of Caria built their city here, and look at this. Absolutely epic. Absolutely epic. Well, I'm not in Turkey anymore. I'm in an old Victorian cemetery near where I live in England. It's a pretty cool place, filled with folklore, potential druidic links, ghost stories, and all that good stuff attached to an old graveyard anywhere. But like many graveyards in the Western world from the 1800s and even after, it's not just gravestones here, but you have these above ground decorated tombs, like this one, and like this one here. And there's a name for these things: mausoleums. And the story of how we get that name, like many things in the Western world, begins in antiquity. So, in order to find out more about these fascinating constructions that many of the most illustrious Victorians chose to be buried in, we've got to go all the way across the Mediterranean Sea to modern-day Turkey and the city of Bodrum. Let's go. In 377 BC, a new ruler came to power in the Achaemenid satrapy of Caria in southwestern Anatolia. It's a beautiful place, mountainous, perched on the edge of the sea, sparkling blue waters and trade ships coming in, even today, just as they did 2,400 years ago. Now, at the time, following the Persian conquests of Anatolia, when the powerful ruler Cyrus the Great swept over the Anatolian kingdoms in the 6th century BC, taking out Lydia, Phrygia, and eventually the Ionian Greek colonies on the western coast. This region fell under the control of the all-powerful Persian Empire, a Near Eastern style state with very different ways of life than the Greeks were used to, with their policies and their different styles of rule. But people adapted, as they always do, and rulers like Hecatomnus of Melos actually benefited from Persian rule. There was no talk of liberty or anything like that, or democracies, under this guy. He was an all-powerful ruler, military commander, and this was his domain. But in that year, 377, he dies and he passes his kingdom to his son. And his name was Mausolus. Now, Mausolus was an especially powerful ruler. Not content to just take over his father's domains, as many new kings often do, he took it upon himself to build a new capital, erecting massive city walls around its perimeter and vast administrative buildings within. And where was that capital? Well, in the ancient world, it was known as Halicarnassus. Today, it's Bodrum. I'm here at the castle of Bodrum, created by the Knights Hospitaller in the 15th century, once they took over this place briefly from the Ottoman Turks, from their base on Rhodes. But believe it or not, when they built this place, they used quite a lot of the architecture from Mausolus's buildings. In particular, the most famous of them all, the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. Now, you may have heard that word before, used for a particularly large tomb to commemorate certain individuals who thought a lot of themselves. But it originates here. Mausolus built the very first mausoleum, and the term has been used ever since. So Mausolus's father, Hecatomnus, was a pretty powerful king. Not content to just govern over his own lands, he set about conquering his neighbouring regions, the other satrapies of Asia Minor, using political manoeuvrings to do so, on behalf of the Persian rulers, of course. So when his son came to the throne, the royal coffers were spilling over. There was a lot of resources, there was a lot of money to do things with. So what does Mausolus do? He carries on the wars of his father, and he becomes probably the most powerful satrap in Western Asia Minor at the time. But Mausolus liked the finer things in life. He wasn't just content to speak the Carian language and spend his time in Asia Minor. He was interested in the Greek world. He spoke Greek, he liked Greek things, and he utilised many Greek architects to build his city. But of course, his greatest achievement of all was the building that he created to store himself when he died, the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. And in order to do this, he utilised all sorts of incredible artists and engineers from across the Greek world. Approximately 45 metres in height, the four sides were adorned with sculptural reliefs, each created by one of the foremost Greek sculptors of the day: Leochares, Bryaxis, Scopas of Paros, and Timotheus. The mausoleum also contained 400 freestanding sculptures. But of course, it was so great that it was considered by Antipater of Sidon as one of the 7 great wonders of the ancient world, alongside the Colossus of Rhodes, Great Pyramid of Giza, the statue of Zeus at Olympia, and the Great Lighthouse of Alexandria. And you can still see it here today. There isn't much left. Like the Temple of Artemis, it's suffered a lot over the years, but its foundations still remain. You can also see all sorts of other architecture from Mausolus' city. Some of the towers and city walls still survive, as well as much smaller tombs. Not quite as amazing as his one, but interesting nonetheless, because you can get an idea of what his would have looked like. And if you want to see the actual sculptures, well, they're in the British Museum. So it's not just the Parthenon marbles that are in here, but all manner of marbles from the Greek world. Carved reliefs depicting elaborate stories from mythology and history. And the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus is no exception. Absolutely loads of carved reliefs are in there. Let's go have a look. So what's left of the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus inside the British Museum? Well, there's quite a lot. In the 1850s, an antiquarian named Sir Charles Thomas Newton went to Bodrum on behalf of the British Museum to dig. Using the ancient sources like Pliny the Elder and others, he located the remains successfully, excavated them, and took them back to Britain. He found the foundation corners and walls, portions of stairways and column bases, sculptural fragments and relief blocks, and large statues long thought to represent Mausolus and his sister Artemisia. Lots of these blocks were also shipped to Malta at the same time, incorporated into naval docks there, but quite a few still remain in the British Museum. And look at these. They depict all sorts of mythological scenes, really just showing what a multicultural, interesting place this was at that time, within the Persian Empire, but all sorts of Greek tales, classical tales from the Iliad and the Odyssey, and all sorts of other mythic tales from the time. But they aren't all in the British Museum. Some of them do remain in Turkey, in the Bodrum Museum of Underwater Archaeology, which is an absolutely fascinating place. That's at the castle where I visited for this video. And of course, at the original site of the mausoleum, you still have many scattered foundation stones, podiums, columns, all sorts of items there. So there is an argument, actually, that in comparison to many of the other wonders of the ancient world noted by Antipater of Sidon, There's actually quite a lot more left from the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus than the others. So, if you find yourself in Bodrum, go and check it out. But don't go on a Monday like I did, because it'll be closed. And of course, get yourself down to the British Museum if you find yourself in London, and you'll see not just these, but rooms of incredible things in there. I've been tens and tens of times. I go many times a year, and I always find something new in that place. So, next time you go to a mausoleum in a graveyard in the Western world, just know that the very first one was here, and it gives its name to all of them everywhere. And there's an interesting end to this place as well, because the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus was the last of the 6 wonders of the ancient world that were destroyed to be destroyed, a series of earthquakes taking it out in the later Middle Ages. The only one that survives, of course, is the Great Pyramid of Giza. You can't really beat that one. Well, if you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to like and subscribe, all that stuff, and I'll see you on the next one.